Darrin, let's start with the main event. Mercedes Mone retaining one of the many titles she carries with her, the TBS Championship on the line. As Excalibur explained in excruciating detail, as brief as it was, it's 4 belts representing 3 championships. Let's tell you about them. I don't think any of that made the match or her title or Dynamite feel more important that she has so many championships, nor do I think her opponent, which, if you watch Collision, you saw her, quote, earn it. But I don't think they did enough to get people invested in this match. There were a lot of moves, a little bit of a slip up on a double springboard attempt. And I don't know. It's Mercedes Mone. There's going to be some good action, and there was. I'm curious what you thought of all aspects of what makes a TV main event work. What boxes did this check, and which ones didn't it?
Oh, that's a good question. The match itself, it was fine. I thought that the Magical Girl was a little bit of a weak challenger coming in because she's in and out inconsistently. She did, of course, earn it if people saw that on Saturday. I think calling
a grown woman a magical girl without more context is just kind of culturally a weird translation.
I was going to say maybe it's cultural differences.
Like when grown men are calling her magical girl. Oh, it's just like,
yeah.
Do that go watch that in private. I don't know. It felt weird to me. Go ahead.
She's really young.
Well, if you turn 18, you're professional and you're not a girl anymore unless one of your friends wants to call you that. But I don't think grown men should be calling grown women girls. I think, it's not 1970s.
I agree.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but I just had to say, it's just like hearing Excalibur refer to her as magical girl. And it's not like there's a backstory that we have been immersed in and seen with our own eyes, where it's sort of like, the Heartbreak Kid. It's like, he's not a kid. Well, I know.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
But even that kind of aged weird, I got to say. But not as weird as Magical Girl. But I'm not, it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes these Japanese women wrestlers, in the way the announcers talk about them without cultural context, it ends up feeling a little weird.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the hook is that Mercedes is promoted as one of their big stars. And so this was a way to showcase her, give her a win, put her in the main event to position her for, future appearances. It seemed like the theme of the show was kind of just to basically build to other things. We have like a 2-month lull in between pay-per-views. So this looked like it was building up to different things. So I got the impression this was to just kind of position her as an important star and have her main event on the main show. And perhaps that was just it. I expected that something was going to happen at the end, and I was a little bit disappointed that they just had an ending. I thought maybe a new challenger for the Australia show would emerge or something like that, but that didn't happen.
That's the thing. It just felt like a match that should be in the middle of a show. I would have liked Mercedes to cut a promo telling us why this was of particular importance to her, or why it wasn't of particular importance, and underrate her or something. And I don't know. I mean, it just there were aspects of the show that I liked, but the main event just felt completely underdeveloped. I mean, Sakazaki is not a household name even with Dynamite viewers, and they rushed her into a main event with a match on Collision that roughly 1/3 of a Dynamite viewership saw, because Saturday night's main event knocked 100,000 off the normal viewership. I don't know. I don't think this checked many boxes, other than Mercedes is a big star, but I think she's diminished. And I do kind of roll my eyes at just belt collector, especially when they're not all major titles either. Just didn't work for me.
Yeah, I think it missed the mark. The match was good, and I guess that's just sometimes you don't always end with a big angle. I mean, there's 52 weeks in a year, and sometimes that's just going to happen.
But save that for a match that people are invested in. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to, that should feel like, oh, it's a big deal. Mercedes retained. That's enough. We don't need an angle to swat. Because you're right, a title match that's in the main event, when it's just a vehicle to get to an angle afterwards, that's as annoying as... It's an annoying in a different way as a match that people aren't invested in emotionally. But, there's this whole, this idea, but she's international and she's a magic girl and I don't know. I just was bummed out at the end at how, when the bell rang and they were doing introductions, I'm just like, did I miss something where they built this up during the show? I just feel like that's, yeah.
And it was a way to have her get a win over one of the regulars where you could build up and maybe one of the money matches. No pun intended, of course, but you can have her beat a challenger that's semi-strong, I suppose, without having to waste. I don't want to say waste, but one of your other big contenders.
Yeah, like to me, I just don't think this should have been the last match. Maybe this should not have been the last match. Then this felt like a middle of Dynamite match.
Yeah, perhaps you could have ended with the Ospreay Omega beatdown, and that might have had a little more impact. I'm not sure why that would have gone last. I would agree with that as well. Something that had a little more impact.
Yeah, just rebook the show so you actually have a real main event that there's more of a backstory to, or end with a big promo that you build up. Anyway, point made on that. Mercedes overall as a character, because when they signed her, you would expect she'd be main eventing some Dynamites. I would have expected if she main evented Dynamite to be in a match that didn't feel like a Rampage match thrown together or something in the middle of a collision, as this one did. But where do you think she is as centerpiece star that I'm sure she's paid to be? Does it come across that way? And do you think the crowd reacted to her that way?
I thought she got a good reaction. I think that it's good to have her have those big matches that she's been having in Japan, and they seem to have given her a little bit of momentum. She was on I want to say it was Sherry Shepherd's show, and they promoted that well afterwards, which is one of the key things they're going to have to do is to get people to some outside projects and then promote it afterwards to position them as stars, and they did that, and I commend them on that. They need to keep that momentum going, but I think that she's positioned as a big enough star and that you can build up to some big money matches. I think her against Mariah May somewhere down the line is going to be something pretty big. Her against Toni Storm. So I think when she gets against those different opponents, Athena, I think there's something left, and I think that she's building up to that.
Yeah, I think they got to get in the Mercedes Moné business, as I put it. Like, make it seem like this show is about her. I think if you were doing that, you can put her in the main event and have her defend her title against somebody who earned it in a thrown together 4-way match on a show relatively few people watched. You can get away with a little bit more if Mercedes feels like she's more consistently a big part of the show. I just don't think the buildup and the goodwill is there. Even before we started our discussion, the chat room, while they're waiting for us to come on, we're commenting about how this shouldn't have been the main event. Goodfella 1422 said Ospreay and Cage should have closed the show. The main event with no closing angle, just Mercedes against a not well-known wrestler. An uneventful main event. And Chris Johnson said, if it's like this company's actively trying to avoid success, how can that be your main event? Someone else suggested that the Brian Cage and the opener should have been the closer. Was it the opener? The Brian? Yes. No, it's 2 hours ago. Mm-hmm. Ospreay and Cage. Yeah, they opened with that. Yep. So that should have been the closer, and I agree. I think there's more backstory there. That Ospreay's he's on TV more and more involved in storylines. It involves Kenny Omega, and the Don Callis family's getting a good push. I think they're doing more with the Don Callis family than they've done in a long time, and in ways that I've wished they've done, which is getting the Don Callis family business. Like, there's vignettes. The vignette on Collision was really good with them at the mansion and the meeting. And there was more things even on this show too, sprinkled in, that I thought were good. So yeah, this just felt like that should have been the main event.
I would definitely concur with that. And plus they're building up that tag team match as a possible main event for Australia. I guess the Toni Storm will probably be the main event, or maybe they're going to call it the co-main event. So that would, on the surface, would have made more sense. I'm not sure something happened behind the scenes or travel issues or something, but yeah, it would have made more sense to do that. I did see a comment that said that Mercedes Moné was ready for the world title, and I think that you could give her credit for elevating that TBS belt, because I think they're on equal footing, that and the world title, where sometimes I forget that that's not the world title. Because it's going to be big when somebody faces her and eventually beats Mercedes. That's going to elevate somebody, maybe someone like a Julia Hart or somebody like that, a Sky Blue or something. So
yeah, no, I to me, the TBS title feeling equal to the world title is a problem. It's not a positive thing. Like, I think you should have a clear world title and a clear secondary title if you have two women's titles. And having two titles that are ambiguously sort of equal, when you don't have a brand split, they're just sort of randomly floating from one show to the other. I don't know. I don't think that's, in WWE, there's two separate world titles, but they're brand associated. I think you would want to have a delineation, like on SmackDown, there's the main women's title, and then the US, and on Raw, the main women's title and the new IC. Because when you have someone carrying around 4 belts representing 3 championships, and it's one of 2 equal belts that are AEW branded on your company, I mean, what are we fighting over? You get to be half champion if you win one of the 2 titles, as opposed to the main champion. So I'm not a fan of how they handle the women's titles, and I think it's more of a negative that Mercedes holding it makes it feel important. But I don't even agree with that premise. I mean, she's a star, but the TBS title, I think there's a lot of good challengers. I just wish they're fighting for one women's title, and it was a clear top tier. And then if there's a secondary title, it shouldn't be the top paid woman in your company, and it should be women who are clearly hoping someday to be world title contenders, which is the whole history of secondary titles. U.S. title in the NWA versus the NWA world champion. Same thing, I mean, so that's what I would vote for here. A couple other comments in chat we can respond to regarding this topic. 27 Newsman just says, in general, as an average U.S. fan, the Japan stuff seems excessive in AEW. This is an example of it. People who know the history of the Japanese wrestlers, they're going to have some baked in interest in seeing Yuka Sakazaki compete in this match, but I don't think AEW does enough heavy lifting. I think they think the novelty of somebody with a reputation from Japan who's appeared on AEW in the past, but isn't exactly immersed in fans' minds these days. I just don't think that's like turnkey main event when you can't have her cut a promo or get people involved on a shorter term basis either.
Yeah, that's I agree with that.
Yeah. SF Niners fan 23 says the main event was Rampage or Dark Level. And Derek Hubbard said Yuta was fine without context and background knowledge, though she is just another. He meant Yuka. It came out Wheeler Yuta.
Yeah.
Yuka. Without context and background knowledge, she's just another Japanese woman wrestler. Jason Ray says the main event was a D-level matchup. And Chris Johnson added a main event with a competitor I don't think I've ever seen or heard of. I just don't get it. Zach Barber defends it, believe it or not, Darren, and says, Wade, the TBS title is a TV title. There doesn't have to be too much build for it. I have no idea what that means. It's a main event match. It's not a TV title, because a TV title would be defended on TV in some sort of regular basis. And I don't even know. There's not even a point for a TV title anymore because there aren't really house shows. It's not billed as a TV title. It's the second women's title with the top paid woman in the company holding it, along with 3 other belts. So I don't get what Zach's saying. Do you, Darren?
Because it's labeled TBS, I guess essentially maybe that's where he's going. It's a TV title, so
it's a TV network. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's
in the most technical sense.
So do you think because it's a TV title that it stands on its own and you should main event a national weekly TV show with it without build or backstory? Is that, I think, what Zach
I don't necessarily agree with that, but
yeah. Well, I think I'm framing Zach's point accurately as he runs the defense of a poorly built main event that nobody else is defending.
It's not a TV title in the historical sense that we've seen like in the Tully Blanchard days, but
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's pause and introduce ourselves and then move on to other topics besides this sort of flat main event. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show. We're here covering AEW Dynamite. I am the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com, and also the host of various podcasts, including this, our Red Logo show on the podcast side of things, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show, and also the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast. The podcast is our Blue Logo show. That is podcast only. It's not on YouTube. Our Red show, we stream live on YouTube. You can watch it there, and then you can download it in audio format, podcast format on our feed. So search Wade Keller, and you'll see both the Blue and Red Logo shows pop up, both on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever iOS or Android app you use. And there are shows on the podcast feeds that are not on YouTube. So if you happen to watch us on YouTube, there's more actually audio shows on the feed than you see here on our YouTube channel. The Blue Logo show this week features the weekly flagship that dropped yesterday with Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net. We talked a lot of Royal Rumble, of course, on Royal Rumble week and WrestleMania speculation. Covered Impact, NXT, the TNA WWE Alliance and AEW Talk 2 in the final half hour or so, talking about Kenny Omega's return. So check that out if you haven't yet. Jason and I have been talking wrestling for decades, and it is a destination show, and I hope if you haven't checked us out yet, you do, and if you're a regular listener, thank you. But we're here tonight to talk AEW Dynamite, and my co-host is Darrin Lilly. I am talking AEW with Darrin for the first time. He has been a WWE Raw and SmackDown co-host over quite a span of time now, but he makes his AEW Dynamite post-show debut tonight. People are confused. I feel like when I see a Dynamite logo above your head, I'm like, I have the wrong logo up above our head on the graphics package here. Darrin, welcome. I'm looking forward to continuing our AEW conversation. I want to pick your brain about your thoughts on this show and kind of big picture stuff in AEW too.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting as well.
Now, not to confuse people, because normally you're on the WWE post show, but you are the main reporter covering Impact, TNA Impact for PWTorch. On the written side, you've got your Impact reports on Thursday nights and also cover their pay-per-views. So if you're into Impact Wrestling, Darrin does a great job. He's been doing it for years, and definitely recommend you check out his coverage and his analysis. Darrin, anything else you want to say about
confusion? It's the Impact guy covering Dynamite.
Who normally covers WWE post shows? Yeah, what's going on? Well, just because you report on Impact doesn't mean you don't watch everything else and don't bring the same analytical chops to other topics. Sure. So couple notes. You can join in the chat room. We've already thrown some chat comments on the screen and read them aloud to our audio listeners. We always try to reference, if we reference a chat, I always will read it because most people listen on audio only, and I don't want you guys to feel lost. So we'll be doing more of that. And also, so continue to do that. If you're watching us live, join in the chat. You can also email us, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. You don't have to watch the show live in order to participate. You can email us while you're watching the show and then listen back later to see if your email made the show. And finally, we have a link up for our VIP members and Patreon supporters. If you want to be on the show as a video caller, you can look for that link on Patreon or on my TV report on the VIP site, the ad-free VIP site only. It is a perk for our VIP members and Patreon supporters. All right, let's get back to some Dynamite conversation here. And let's go right to the top of the show because we have a continuation of the Don Callis storyline and the big angle last week with Omega and Ospreay. This was a one-on-one match resulting from last week's brawl that opened the show. Lance Archer and Brian Cage's corner. Will Ospreay wins in about 13 minutes. Then there was an attack afterwards. Kenny Omega, who was beat up backstage before the match, just ran to the ring like nothing happened after the match, which was good. He recovered quickly. Not sure what the pre-match attack was all about, other than to create a little sense of jeopardy that he wouldn't be able to come out, but he did. But then Takeshita and Fletcher joined in the attack and beat them from behind. Don Callis joined in. So, it's pretty much booking 101. Nothing like overly wrong with it. Formula, have heels outnumber baby faces. What'd you think of the match? Should it take 13 minutes for Ospreay to beat somebody like Cage, who has a losing record in AEW over the years against anyone with a winning record, and is now in a tag team? Or is 13 fine and Cage is physically imposing enough that's fine? You got to fill TV time, and AEW's established. Even people lose all the time. It takes a while to wear them down.
Right, that's the pattern that AEW goes. Cage is good in that role as somebody that's big and imposing. They give him little wins here and there for credibility's sake. Yes, yeah. No, as you point out, not against the big name. So it was good. It's always fans really react to Will Ospreay. He's the guy that I think that they should probably build around, and it's good to have him kick off the show, get a decent win. I think that they're on the downside of those beatdowns a little bit too much if you want to establish a baby face for my taste, but I understand that you're going into the tag match in Australia, so you need to keep some heat on them. But I think if you want to really build a strong baby face, and that's something AEW has not really done to the greatest degree, you got to have them triumph more often than not, and they wind up being victims of the numbers games. Don't these guys have friends or anything? I always ask.
Yeah. Penny's out, so there's nobody who's going to help poor Will Ospreay. Because if you're only established as a friend on TV, are you allowed to run in and make the save? It's weird that almost feels like sort of Kevin Owens talks sometimes on WWE, says you're not supposed to come out unless I mention your name. Like there's these unwritten rules of TV wrestling angles that he kind of brings up. It seems like an unwritten rule. You're not allowed to to make a save unless you're an on-air friend of somebody or a tag partner. It's kind of funny.
It's pretty glaring there too.
Yeah. You know what I'm glad about, Darren, more than anything is while that brawl was going on, the 4-on-2 beatdown, no security guards were hurt. Security didn't run out to break them up. No security guards get beat up. I was so happy. Those poor guys, they're just doing their job. Security, hourly wage.
Yeah. I don't think any got beat up all night.
I think on Collision there was a bunch of security guards who got beat up, and maybe they're protesting and they just refuse to go to Dynamite anymore because nobody cares about them. They're like the stormtroopers. They just get shot, killed. Nobody cares. No funerals, no mourning. They have no family. If they do, nobody cares. They just walk. I don't know. It's just
this is the week they put their foot down, I guess.
Exactly. I would. By the way, I will pop, and I wouldn't recommend doing this, but I'd still pop if Dynamite opened with a bunch of security guards standing in the ring going, "We got something to say. We got to complain," and I just do hold the show hostage, going, "We're not going to be security guys anymore if wrestlers aren't going to get suspended or fired for we're just doing our job and we get beat up and nobody cares constantly." Cody Rhodes, the most wholesome person in the world on wrestling shows, beats up security guards and everyone's like, well, that's they're just doing their job and they shouldn't do their job, so Cody gets to beat him up. So I said I think they're pushing the Don Callis family. Well, all joking aside, this is it feels like the most sustained Don Callis family business that we've seen them in. It's been start and stop over the years. There's been some stretches. They've got it. I wish they made it clear that Archer and Cage are this dominating tag team and that they were protecting them more as a tag team. Establish that. And I wish, this is my wish list. I'm complimenting them with a wish list. I wish we knew, is Fletcher or Takeshita higher in the hierarchy? Who's more important instead of just sort of two, neither are established main eventers, so it's not clear. And are they jealous of each other? Are they competing for main events? Who do you go through first to get to the other? I want hierarchy. So Archer and Cage, they lose singles matches all the time, but as a tag team, cardio's not as big of a deal. That should be a storyline. They're better as a tag team because they're big, strong guys, but in AEW, cardio's important. Well, they taking it out, so they do better. Like, give us something to believe in, and then have them start winning. But meanwhile, is Takeshita the top guy and Fletcher is underneath him, or what? And how do they all feel about each other? How does Callis feel differently about him? We see that within the Judgment Day. We see that with the Bloodline. There's a clear difference between everybody. How everybody interacts with everybody else. I'd love if, like, Cage was a big fan of Fletcher and that made Takeshita upset. Like, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but give us a little intra faction dynamic to kind of sink our teeth into. But I have called for, Darren, very regularly, more Don Callis on television. I say this too. I always like wrapping compliments in an insult, vice versa. I think he's overrated. I think it's more a desire to be complete. It's not that I like the dichotomy of it, but I think Don Callis is overrated. But I think he's underutilized. And so I think some people talk about him like he's this great manager. I'm like, show me. When has he been a great manager? He's not consistently great. He's not consistently in money drawing angles. He shows up and does his thing. I think people see potential in him to be great, and so they say he's great because there's so few managers these days. But I don't know. I see him sort of resting on the laurels of internet praise. I don't see him actually doing money-drawing promos and money-drawing angles where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a payoff. So it's a challenge. I want him to rise to the potential that people see in him, and I want him to earn the praise he's getting because it's in him. Like, I think he has that potential. I think he had a good night on Collision. I think he had a good night tonight. Like I said, I like that. I liked his color commentary the last two times, especially on Collision. I like the mansion meeting. I just think when you think of AEW these days, one of the top, 8 people you should think of is, I want to tune in to see Don Callis get what he's got coming. Be consistent with it and see what happens. So I think they're in a pretty good spot right now. As Zach Barber points out in the chat, he comes out and the crowd is chanting F Don Callis at him. I mean, there's heat there. So take advantage of that. And build up that heat. So what do you think of Don Callis and the Don Callis family push these days?
Yeah, I really like his work. You mentioned the consistency. Some of that is not his fault. You've got to give the storyline, keep him constantly in the mix.
Nothing I said is blaming him. I'm evaluating the on-air product. I'm not assigning blame. It might be his fault. It probably isn't. You're right. It's probably Tony Khan's fault. What I'm calling for is a more consistency to him online.
Sure, because there have been some flashes where he's like the most hated guy, gets the most heat on the show, but they've got to consistently keep him in the mix. That's a key thing, and add some depth, as you said, with the interaction in the faction. I thought the vignette on Collision was a great step in the right direction as far as that. Kind of fleshes out the characters. You saw them interact a bit from a production standpoint. Very well done. I think they need to keep at that though, so you can get invested in those characters and the tag team of Cage and Archer, and as you said, the interaction between Takeshita and Fletcher, and keep Don Callis on, give him plenty of airtime to cut promos and everything, so he builds that momentum and keep them as a top group. And I think you really have something there for a babyface to go up against. Can you imagine them against Swerve eventually, that type of thing? And I think that would benefit both parties.
Yeah, I'd map out 9 months of the Don Callis story, and I'd build a lot of storylines around the trajectory of him, the triumphs, the setbacks, him getting heat on baby faces, and then baby faces getting back at him, and build kind of a roadmap of an ebb and flow, so that because I mean I've seen territories built around managers, and like I said, I think Callis is overrated because I think of unfulfilled potential. I think people project success onto him that he hasn't frankly hasn't produced on air yet. But when he is given TV time, he's mostly very good to excellent, and so. Let's do it. Let's make money. Let's use him to help get baby faces over. And I said it for years now. I think AEW needs to kind of whittle down who they're focused on, so that it's like the NBA and LJ use it incessantly, but the starter minutes. There's good players who ride the bench because they're starters who are just a little bit better or quite a bit better, even if those other players you feel bad. So give Don Callis starter minutes on Dynamite and Collision. Yeah. Let's make 2025 a year where, and they have with Ospreay and Omega now, just two top baby faces that makes sense now to give him that TV time.
Absolutely.
Mark Paschetti says, as someone who grew up on Bobby Heenan, me too, and now Paul Heyman's genius, Callis simply doesn't compare. What metric could you point to that puts him in the conversation of those two? I agree. I don't think he should be in the conversation. I think he's next level down, but that next level when you're below Bobby and Paul can still be really, really good, right, Darren? I mean, that's, in vintage top level Jim Cornette, peak, it was a small time, but peak Jimmy Hart in Memphis. I mean, there's some managers who are I think historically better than Don Callis. Let 2025, 2026 be this 2-year period where Callis puts his name in that conversation. And I think he's worth doing that for.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of room underneath that next tier, underneath Bobby Heenan and Paul Heyman. So yeah, and I think he could definitely reach that given the opportunity. And it seems like they're on the right road. And in fact, during that vignette on Saturday, they mentioned adding another member, so it looks like they're committing to, I'm not sure who that would be, but it seems like they're committing to a bigger stable. If it's a big enough name, I think that is headed in the right direction as well. Yeah, no sense adding another mid-card person, but
I'm curious about that. Sadler version 3 says, I assumed Darren didn't watch AEW because I haven't seen him on Dynamite. So you assumed wrong. Brian Finlay overall said the show is horrible. WBD needs to pressure Tony Khan to step away from the book. I don't know. I'm going to evaluate. I'm not. It's hard to tell. Yeah, it wasn't a horrible show, and it's hard to tell. The owner, whose dream is to book a national wrestling company, to fire himself.
Tough conversation.
Yeah. Yes. By the way, Zach said regarding our discussion about the TBS title being a TV title, he goes, it's named after the work, LOL. Yeah, so? I mean, the TNT title was a secondary title. It was the IC title of Cody Rhodes. It wasn't, I don't know what you think a TV title is, Zach, but a TV title by definition is a title that's defended more often than the world title. The genesis of the TV titles in the 80s, where it's a title that's defended on TV. It was during an era where titles were not defended on TV. It was just squash matches. So a TV title was novel because it was defended on TV. It also got defended on house shows, which I was critical of because a TV title should always be defended on TV. I never got why pay-per-view's fine, but it shouldn't have been defended on house shows. But the novelty of it is we have a title that's not for the top wrestlers, but it's a title that you get to see defended on TV. The AEW World title is not defended on Dynamite and Collision very often. If you want to define the TBS title is different from the Women's World title, and I don't have stats on this. Darren, do you have a hunch whether the women's main world title or the TBS title have a big difference in terms of how often that they've been defended on Dynamite and Collision? Does it seem like one is defended so, like, is the TBS title defended so often that I'm just kind of didn't pay attention and it sort of has by default become a sort of a more standard TV title?
No, I think it's about even, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so
based on what I've seen.
So I don't think, because it's named the TBS title, and I don't think, the TNT title was, to me, I thought they were named after the networks because Tony Khan wanted to kiss up to the networks and get a new TV deal and emphasize what channel he's on to be less cynical. I don't think it was meant to be, this title would be defended on TV more often than the world title. It was never explained that way, so I don't know why we would assume that, just it's named after the network, but yeah, they're on TBS and TNT. Just call it a TBS TV title if that's going to be the point. All right. Anyway. Thanks, Zach. Another topic here, Darren, is Ricochet and AR Fox. The announcers had to do the heavy lifting, saying these two have experience on the indie scene. I think Shivani got fed a line that AR Fox like 4-0 against Ricochet or something like that, and then all of a sudden he sort of stopped in the middle, like almost, am I not supposed to say this? Like, I wasn't quite sure. It was kind of awkward. I don't even know if I didn't look up if that's a real record. So, AR Fox is back. Again, we talk about going a long time. He took Ricochet 10 minutes to beat AR Fox. Is that too long or just standard practice for AEW? Kind of covered it when we talked about the opener.
So he's alluded to. It's standard, and maybe that's something that they need to work in a few more short squashes, but they seem to like to showcase people's athletic ability, and I kind of get that as well. I don't think people will hold that against Ricochet. He's someone... I like the direction he's getting some heat from the psycho character that he's playing. I don't necessarily like scissors because I'm just always afraid someone's going to get really hurt with them because I don't know. That's just me.
Well, there's another reason not to like scissors. It's
illegal.
super stupid to put them on a wrestling show. AEW's fascination with weapons, we've got the ring is one thing, like brass knuckles, like that's a fighting weapon. You punch someone, and adds a little extra force. But plastic bags, screwdrivers, sledgehammers, scissors, like what are we doing here? That shouldn't be part of wrestling canon. It's so honestly, what do we think? What do we think Ricochet would have done to AR Fox if Swerve Strickland didn't show up? Like, seriously, are we supposed to believe he was going to stab him in the throat and kill him in front of our very eyes? Because that's capital F's, all caps lock, forever stupid. You can't threaten something that is not going to happen on a wrestling show and expect us to be engaged and take it seriously. Someone who produces a weapon and threatens to kill somebody with a deadly weapon, which, by the way, holding scissors to throat they should be fired. I mean, I mean that in a storyline sense, that isn't something that we should just move on from and move to the next segment. So it's just like a fourth grader's booking this sometimes, Darren. I mean, like, no one's thought of using scissors. Let's do scissors. You know why no one does that? Who is a successful booker? Because it's stupid. Because it doesn't fit in the context of wrestling. It's not that someone might really get hurt. It's in this, that too. But for sure. But in the context of the storyline, my concern isn't for the actual life of wrestlers. It's for the integrity of the storylines, Darren. What are we to believe Ricochet would have done if Swerve wasn't there? And if you can't answer that question in any way that fits within wrestling, then do not do it. Honestly, it's like a fourth grader going, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? I mean, like, grow up. Everybody grow up in AEW. Stop with screwdrivers and, like, fireballs I'm even better with because it burns. Okay, it burns you. So you got to burn for a week or whatever. You put some lotion on it, you're fine.
Don't encourage that.
But a screwdriver to the but you recover from it. But a screwdriver to the eye, you don't. I didn't like the Rey Mysterio nonsense either. Stop it. The wrestling. If you do, this is my rant. If you do your job as a booker, a pinfall or submission is the ultimate way. It's like the ultimate way to settle 99 out of 100 situations. That's the story you're telling. If you want to tell a different story, go make a movie where people stab each other with scissors. But if you're in the wrestling business, don't hotshot, don't overdo it, don't be gratuitous, don't be a fourth grader fantasy booking. Tell stories where the pinfall, the win and the loss in the end is what matters. That's how sports work. Nobody in MMA is going, he knocked him out and won in round 2. That'd have been more cool if there was a weapon. Nobody says that because it would be stupid. It's not a sport anymore. And I know wrestling embellishes somewhat, but I had that totally circled as a talking point. It's like everyone's like, hey, I'm going to come up with a new deadly weapon that I can never use. and that's going to make wrestling more exciting. It doesn't. All right, Darrin.
Hey, although he did use the scissors on Swerve, though. I mean, you can debate that, but he did.
So right, and that was he should be fired. It's a deadly weapon.
Sure.
Like he's holding it to the guy's throat. You're like, what? So we're to believe he's going to like stab him in the throat, cause him to bleed, but avoid the carotid artery, so he lives, and he sends him a message. Like, it's just.
There are many things in defense in wrestling that people would be arrested for. I mean, a knee drop to somebody's throat probably would be arrested for that kind of thing. But I mean, I get your point, but also they do add dramatic elements to wrestling also.
Dramatic elements that completely take me out of the rules of engagement in the canon of storytelling, and I don't think it works.
You could argue that.
I don't know. I don't like you defending that, Darrin. I'm disappointed. So King of Strong says he
just offering
counterpoint.
Yes.
I feel very I genuinely I genuinely feel there shouldn't be deadly weapons incorporated into wrestling. I mean, I just because why would a wrestler
as well?
Yeah, why would a wrestler sort of use it but not use it all the way? Like just be disciplined, tell a story where wrestling moves and matches, and that's how you win. Or a 2-on-1 beatdown and you stomp on someone's leg, incapacitates them so they can't wrestle. But like, just when you start bringing that stuff in, it's just hack. It's just hack booking. It's not that nobody's thought of it. Good bookers know it. It takes you out of the rules of engagement, the realm of the rules of storytelling, the narrative structure of how wrestlers settle things. And it's not even an honor code. It should just be, well, I know if I brought scissors into the ring and held it up to someone's throat, I'd be fired. I mean, that should just be sort of baked in as an assumption, the way that the show is booked. And instead, Jon Moxley gets to keep hanging around even after he tried to suffocate Bryan Danielson to death. I mean, it's just one thing after another. And it's like, if you're good at what you do, to me, it's the booking equivalent of if you read a book from an author and you're reading along and they have giant font to make their point instead of a well-written sentence with the right words. And then you turn the page and they underline and italicize. And then during a romantic scene, they dot their I's with hearts. It's like, no, the English language is full of rich words that you can use. Language, sentences, the way you structure them can just move people with the cadence and the rhythm and the meaning. Hack writers or 12-year-old girls writing to their friends add a bunch of emojis and hearts and underline them and change pen colors. That's what this kind of booking is. There's a way to book wrestling really effectively and tell the story. And then there's dotting your I's with hearts and doing big, bold font and underlining things and using a bunch of exclamation marks. And that's what this is. It's hack. It'd be hack writing. No book publisher would publish you if you did that. And this stuff, it's over the top. It's just over the top. Let's see. On a different note regarding Ricochet, how do you feel they are doing with him? King Strong Style says, by the way, he's holding hostage an attempted assault weekly on national TV. What do you think about how Ricochet's doing? Because I think there's some, I enjoy seeing heel Ricochet. I think his interaction with Renee and his body language and the pattern is there. But Chris Johnson points out, Ricochet's character randomly and drastically changed for no reason with seemingly no direction going forward. I think that's too harsh. I think there was a backstory with Ospreay and Ricochet. I think the story is Ricochet wanted Ospreay to look up to him, wanted to be better than him, and Ospreay had surpassed him, and so Ricochet now has to use heel tactics in order to close the gap that exists between him and Ospreay. I think it's a great formula for why somebody turns heel. It's because fighting fair isn't enough to win, so now they have to cheat. People can relate to that in life. Some people who can't compete, they cheat to get ahead. And I think that's sort of a Ricochet's mid-career crisis that these younger guys are surpassing him. To me, that works. So talk about Ricochet. What have you thought about?
And I think the unhinged thing is working for him. Again, I wouldn't go with the scissors thing, and we've kind of alluded to why that is. But excuse me, outside of that, I think this is a work in progress, and it's kind of working for him. And I think it's getting heat with the audiences as well. I think they just need to kind of phase out certain aspects of the character as we've gone over, and kind of focus on his unhinged behavior. And
yeah,
I think he's headed in the right direction, though.
yeah.
To complement his in-ring skills, they're adding a little bit of character depth as well.
Yeah. So Sadler says, I thought Ricochet's heel turn happened in the Swerve feud, not the Ospreay feud. My point is I think Ricochet and Ospreay had this idea of who's the better high flyer, who's not. Ospreay was better than it. It put doubt in Ricochet's mind. Am I going to be able to compete? Next feud, that happens. I don't want to. I'm sort of laying out what I think is a repeatable standard for why somebody would turn heel, and it's coming up short against somebody who you were once better than or once looked up to you, and that formula was there. And as King of Strong Style says, they blew the Will versus Ricochet matches already. But the story just in general is when you can't compete on your own, you cheat. When you can't win within the rules, then you start becoming a master of cheating. And yeah, I don't know if they've told that story well enough. But Chris Johnson says, I think I have to blame Ricochet and not Tony, because Hurt Syndicate is successful right now, and it's clear that everyone is going to gets to basically write their own stuff. Just because some people get to write their own stuff, Darren, doesn't mean everybody is, and I think Tony's writing some of their stuff. So unless I hear for sure otherwise, I do, out of fairness, like to talk about the end result of the product. Like when I was critical of WWE announcing, people go, well, it's Vince McMahon in their ear. And I'm like, I'm not blaming Michael Cole. I'm just saying that the result of the announcing that Michael Cole is the voice of is a problem. You're projecting onto my criticism that I'm blaming Michael Cole. I'm just critiquing the end product. I can assess blame, but if I do so, I'll do so specifically. But in this case with Ricochet, the end result, I think, is more good than bad for him, in the sense that he was a pretty bland babyface, and AEW has a bunch of people who do spots like his. So this actually has created more of a distinct personality for him.
Yeah, and it's made him stand out to go up against to develop his character aspects, as opposed to in WWE when he was, I don't know, what did they call him, like real life superhero or something, which was just very two-dimensional. And this is kind of adding some character depth, and we'll see how it plays out.
So as far as, since we haven't talked AEW, what did you think of how Ricochet was brought in after being in WWE as sort of a high-flying upper mid-card novelty guy that didn't win a lot, got some start and stop pushes, but nothing sustained. Certainly no character development. I think they just felt like there wasn't a lot to do with what he brought charisma-wise on the microphone. I actually think he's found his way to a persona, and it was bumpy, and the stuff was like, what's going on? And it didn't have context. And I think we were just sort of jarred by this guy who was sort of, I don't know, soft-spoken and well-spoken is word, but he's just sort of like, didn't come across as a typical yelling wrestler, and so finding something that was more of a hook was a bumpy journey, but I think we've landed somewhere where I think there's something there to work with in terms of a heel persona with him.
Yeah, that's something I haven't seen from him, even going back to the Lucha Underground days to WWE, and this is a new aspect of him, because, as you said, he'd get lost in the mix just being a high flyer, because they have so many people that can do that. You've got to bring something else to the table, and I think it's a work in progress, definitely. And as we see him get more airtime and go up against different people as they hone this character, I think he's somebody that could be a breakout person and contend for some more airtime and some championships, being some good feuds and stuff.
Chris Johnson is not sold. He says Ricochet went from being an over mid-carder flyer in one company to holding hostages with golden scissors and getting no crowd reaction at all in another company. And Rizella said, yeah. And then Rizella says, this promotion's bad. All they do is start and stop things. They never follow through. I think Wade and his coach need to be more critical. The low ticket sales and falling interest says it all. I don't keep track of how critical I just react to the segments. And if it adds up to being more or less critical, we have an open chat, email, and live callers. And if there's things, and Zach Barber, to keep us in check. If you think we're ignoring positives, I actually had a lot of good things to say about Collision this week. And I thought there's some good things in, I think there's some, I'm complimenting the Don Callis story, for instance. So I don't think all they do is start and stop things, but I think follow through is an issue. I think that there's a big picture with Tony Khan. There's, the go-to angle is the Young Bucks thing and the neck brace, and it just kind of got dropped. And then you had this Moxie thing keeps going on, and we'll get to that. But is it in a new place? Has it changed, or do we just so? But I want to talk about that as a separate topic. So the start and stop aspect of the booking, I think, has validity. But there are some storylines that they see through also. It's a mixed bag, but I think there's definitely room for improvement as far as that goes, Darrin.
Sure. Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the Mariah May Toni Storm angle on Collision, the follow-up tonight. I thought I heard great things about the Toni Storm Mariah May angle before I watched the show, and then I watched the show, and I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was as good as the rave reviews for it. But I was disheartened, but I want to be talked out of it by Mariah May's response tonight. What you followed the whole Toni Storm thing, Darrin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Toni Storm revealed the hardest role to play is yourself, and basically said, I've been acting all along. Mariah May comes on tonight and just no-sells it. It's like no-selling a pile driver. We had this long story that goes back however many years. It goes back many months. And Mariah comes out. She's not shaken up by this. She's not affected by it. Toni Storm did this whole ruse. And you have the heel standing out there as confident as ever, completely just blowing off what Toni Storm just did, which was supposed to be psychological warfare to, I assume, to throw Mariah May off. So I watched that and I'm like, I want to think about this more, but my initial inclination is she just did what Rock did on the first Netflix, just blew off the feud with Cody. Like, oh, let's shake your hand. She's like, I'm just going to beat you up. She didn't care at all that Toni Storm revealed this. There was no selling of it. So I ask you, what is the point if this is real life and pro wrestling's telling a story in its own world that should resemble some sort of, that emotion that should conjure up emotions humans relate to. And I don't know what emotion we're supposed to have about Toni Storm's reveal when days later Mariah's out there just going, well, no big deal. I'm still going to beat you. I'm better than you. It was just very generic heel promo in response to it.
Yeah, I saw the segment on Collision and I thought it was very well done. I was a big fan of that segment. And towards the end of it, as Toni Storm was making her reemergence as her timeless self, Mariah was selling that she was scared and she had fear, and I thought they'd follow up with that tonight, and that was a bit of a miss tonight because she just absolutely didn't. I thought if they had followed through and she was still scared and was going to did not want to face Toni, that would have added a little bit to it, but she just totally blew it off. There was no nuance to it where she was pretending to be confident. Even if they had hinted at that, I thought that would have been a little bit better, but she just kind of went past it. I want to know what Toni's response is going to be coming up on Collision. They teased that, and I would have liked to have seen some kind of confrontation or something, but they went in a different direction, and that was very disappointing to follow up on that.
Yeah. For people who didn't see the show or just kind of, hit the bullet points here, Renee said, what do you think about the metamorphosis of timeless Toni Storm? Mariah looked into the camera and said, if she wants to play the role of Toni Storm, how about playing the Storm who gave her heart to a woman who used her to play Storm, whose most memorable moment was bleeding and crying in her hands, or play the Storm who walked out of Wembley Stadium in Japan and Mexico because she couldn't touch me. I don't even know I kind of know what that means, but be more specific. She said she can play whatever Storm she wants, but the ending stays the same. She doesn't need to role play because when you're this good, you don't need to change a thing. She said she is a woman from hell and she always will be, and she'll remind her for the rest of her life. I hope there is a follow-up where Mariah May is rattled, but I just felt this was basically Mariah May taking a 14-month storyline that had a peak moment that generated buzz on Saturday, and she walked out with a fire extinguisher and sprayed it on it. Just extinguished any effect other than it was entertaining and it got people asking, what does this mean? Yeah, heel didn't care. So when this storyline was devised and people were hooked on it, wondering, what does it mean? Where's it going? What does it mean where it's going? Then, what did it do? King of Strong Style says, I still don't understand what Toni accomplished by playing this role in the first place. How did it advance anything? And I am open to an explanation. Maybe there's something about this I'm just not quite getting. Zach Barber says, I don't think you want Mariah May to be shaking in her boots. That's not who she is. Fair enough. Then why do this storyline? If the idea is Toni's gonna play mind games with Mariah May and they have this huge backstory, and we're going to spend 14 months on it, and people are going to speculate wildly about it. We're going to do these videos. We're going to have this whole character change. What's the end goal? Oh, the end goal is there's going to be a heel who she's doing this to who's going to completely no-sell it because that's her character to no-sell everything. Well, then I'd say let's not do this story because it sure is a flat payoff to putting that much time into it. So, Zach, you're sort of begging the question in a sense. I'm going in the sense that you're restating my question. Mariah's the type of heel who's not shaken up by things. Well, shouldn't a 14-month storyline with its intricately plotted deception on Toni Storm's part, which I assume was done to play mind games with Mariah, wouldn't it mean something if Mariah, who can't be shaken, it's not her character, is shaken to the core by this? There should have been some, I mean, they put all this time into it, and that's the follow-up promo from the heel?
Yeah, that's a big problem. Now, we'll find out, I guess, maybe they can salvage this somehow with Toni Storm doing her comeback on Collision. Maybe they'll have some kind of confrontation, some back and forth. Not sure how that's going to play out, but yeah, this is a wrong turn in the storyline.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like if someone said, "Oh, I think they'll clean this up," or if they think this is a mistake, how do you clean it up? Or if it's not a mistake, because the next thing that Toni Storm says on Collision is going to make more sense. I can't imagine what that would be. I don't know how you fix this. I mean, do you have Mariah being brave on camera, but now on Collision, Toni Storm shows secret footage backstage of Mariah May throwing a fit afterwards and says, yeah, she puts up a brave front on TV, but in reality, everybody who's seen her when she thinks the cameras are off sees somebody different who's completely shaken up and rattled. Like, I mean, maybe there's some room for that, but I don't sense that's the story they're trying to tell here, or that's what's on their mind. King of Strong Style says Wade is spot on. She didn't sell it or care. Fan Blast said, I thought the same thing, Wade. Totally. She sucked all the air right out of the angle. Timeless Toni doesn't scare her any more than old Toni. I just don't know how you book this storyline and don't think about what's the point of doing it that makes us care more about the match. I just, like, it kind of blows my mind. I mean, there's some people defending it going, well, I was entertained and teach their own and some just lame, I guess, defenses. But come on, you book this. That's the payoff. The heel going, you want to play a role, play this role, that role, that role. And I don't know. It didn't make me want to see Toni beat her up more. It made me think Toni sure went on a long escapade for no reason at all. And it completely whatever Toni's mind games were, fell flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got their work cut out for them.
Yeah. Fan Blast says Mariah should be shaken up. Absolutely. King of Strong Style says they already blew it off. How can you save it? Zach Barber says you raise a good point. As Darren said, let's wait and hear Toni's explanation. I just don't know what Toni's explanation is going to be other than revealing Mariah May is more shaken up than she's letting on. Joe Schmo said, by the way, Joe, I know he's using that name for a while, but you're great on that show that follows Dynamite. It's just that the reality TBS show of the guy who's on a reality show and doesn't know it. That's his name here. I was trying to think of a smooth way to make a joke. It wasn't super smooth. The story doesn't make sense because Toni got beat down. It's not like pretending gave her an edge against Mariah. She could have just returned last week. And Sadler Version 3 just says, yeah, if Mariah no sells isn't rattled, that makes Toni look like a complete moron and buries her. And again, I just don't think this is honestly like a profound critique. I was watching Mariah and my jaw just dropped like, really? That's the follow-up to this is no selling? I mean, I didn't like the Gates of Agony no selling a pile driver on Saturday, but it didn't work quite as much as this. This was like no selling 20 pile drivers or 14 straight months of pile drivers, and you stand up and go, didn't bother me. So yeah, I'm just disappointed in that. So Zach just elaborated, and he just goes, 14 months, Mariah being smugly confident is in line with who she is. Sociopaths aren't rattled by much. So I guess that, if there's room for that with Toni Storm, let's see. What game on, Toni. Had us invest 14 months in this. She and Toni were in on this together. Come up with something good on Collision where Toni explains why this was worth all the effort if Mariah was so cool, calm, and collected just days later. But yeah, Noah, King of Strong says no one can explain how Toni played this character and how playing that character helped her get back at Mariah. So we'll see. But I think the match, as disappointed as I am, I think they kind of have to headline with it. I don't think there's a stronger match on the lineup. I mean, the Callis family match can, but I mean, if you set gender aside, you shouldn't have to, but like if you're blind to gender, that's the biggest singles match with the most build, with the biggest stars.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And plus, it's her hometown, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to play a big factor in it as well. I suspect there might be a title change as well.
I know, but even if it weren't her hometown, like I would say this should headline. I mean, this card, but especially, and it's Grand Slam. I mean, it shouldn't even matter either. If this was, they're all in, I think it should headline. Like, I mean, with the time they put on it, even though I feel like they blew it tonight, I still think there's enough time spent on it, and it's a major title, and I think it means more than, as Zach would say, the TBS TV title. That they should go big with it. And it's, I'm always looking for an excuse to headline with a women's title match, or for that matter, the tag team titles. And I mean, if you can justify it with the storyline and the wrestlers you have, then do it.
Yeah, if there ever was a chance, this was it.
Yep. So, a lot of TV time the last couple weeks dedicated to Jeff Jarrett and MJF. A disaster 2 weeks ago. Last week, they picked up the broken glass and mopped up the broken pickle jar in aisle 3. Did their best. And this week, Jarrett had to beat Claudio to get a title shot. He lost. And the commentary focus, after we were invested in all these promos with Jarrett, was Shivani saying it's going to be next to impossible to deal with these guys, meaning the Death Riders. I don't think they did enough the announcers did enough to this is if the presupposition is people care about Jeff Jarrett and him getting a title shot, then if you believe in that, and you need to believe in that to give him and Jarrett the TV time they've given Jarrett the last few weeks of the storyline, the TV time. You must believe in that. That must be the baseline belief in Jarrett. Then him losing to Claudio the headline should be Jarrett's dream of earning a title shot against Moxley has just been extinguished. And instead, Shivani goes, it's tough to deal with these Death Riders. They sure do gang up on people. And then MJF walks out and, says, I told you so. You messed with me. But this is criticism of how the announcers were produced or what they came up with on their own. The story here is Jarrett had a title shot. It got taken away. We framed it as a very big deal for him. And now it went poof and it's gone. I don't think they did enough with that. And then we just got the generic who can top each other, Shivani or Excalibur, saying what an awful human being MJF is. But there wasn't really an actual human reaction to Jarrett's disappointment. It was just, MJF's despicable and detestable and horrible and scum. But there's no specifics, about this. And so I don't know. I didn't think this was a satisfying conclusion to a storyline that I felt got too much TV time, but don't just give up like this.
Yeah, I presume we haven't seen the last of this. I'm trying to make sense of why Jarrett is getting so much TV time. And I guess when he cut those promos and those lengthy 9-minute promos during the build up to the Owen Hart tournament, I thought that I'm just speculating again that they thought they had some magic there, and for the next one maybe they would center it around him, and that's where this is all leading to. That would kind of make sense of this. Otherwise, I don't see why you're devoting so much time to Jeff Jarrett, and they must think that's a kind of money angle, and I'm not necessarily sold on that, but otherwise I can't make sense of this.
I think Jeff Jarrett is a good salesman. I think or Tony Khan's a mark for title belts, because he's sure held a lot of them. But genuinely, I don't think there's a rational defense for Jarrett getting the Sting treatment or the John Cena treatment, and that's what he got the last few weeks. So I just think, there's a lot of things about Jeff Jarrett that locker room can learn from, but I don't think the lesson should be, when you're 57 years old, talk yourself into getting more TV time than anybody else in the company at a time when the company has sort of a cool factor problem, and MJF is coming off a couple years of bad feuds that people are rolling their eyes and groaning at. So let's put Jeff Jarrett in the ring in a feud with MJF. And by the way, let's do a marathon promo where we talk about all the things that people think about Jeff Jarrett, which is when he's on TV, the company he's headlining for is about to die, and that he's overpushed, and all that. I mean, they drew too much attention to the obvious negatives. And Jarrett's going, yeah, well, you're a one-hit wonder. And you know what? Everybody's been thinking that for 2 years watching MJF. Like, well, he was good 3 years ago, but he's swinging and missing a lot more lately. I just think Jarrett talked Tony Khan, and, just the polished carny way that wrestlers talk to promoters and get TV time. I called it carny, and the next week on TV, MJF called him a carny. I think that's what this was. It was just a veteran who's a smooth talker and a genuinely nice, comes across as just a nice guy to people. Goes, hey, I got a good idea. I can show how an angle is done. And it's been a mess.
I wonder if he's selling Global Force Gold again.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yep. God, Global Force Wrestling. Jason Paul and I had so much fun doing the daily updates on which wrestler got added to the website, who we know would never actually get a payday for that company and wrestle for them.
I remember that.
It was just a shell company. It was just it was funny. I had Jeff Jarrett on the show, and I like Jeff, and there's a lot I respect about Jeff, but if I think he's involved in something that's counterproductive, and I think his angle, there's nothing you've done, MJF, that I didn't do. And it's like, hey, I watched your whole career. That's so not true. What, what are you talking about? I'm going to call it as I see it, but he, what was I going to say about, I just lost my train of thought. MJF, Jarrett, I can't remember what I was going to say. Where is this going?
I suspect Hangman, I'm glad you said that Hangman Page is going to be involved in this somehow to bail out Jarrett and kind of bring that full circle. And then he goes up against MJF. I think that's where this is headed, because they kind of cross paths tonight, to maybe tease that as well. And that would kind of make sense of things as well. And they really do need to get Hangman Page up and running, because he's one of their main guys and people are reacting to him, and he's got a little momentum going right now. Now his character has been all over the place as well, burning down houses and whatnot, and now he's seems to be turning babyface. We had the confrontation with Christopher Daniels and seems to be on that road, and I think people will be receptive to that right now. But you got to give a guy some solid direction here, for Pete's sake.
Zach wants to know, Darren, if MJF retires Jarrett at Grand Slam, will you have the same feeling? My criticism is very specific. If you believe Jeff Jarrett is worth the TV time you gave him, which most people don't, and I don't think if MJF retires him, it still justifies the amount of TV time that they gave this feud, in part because I think their segments are better when they're more concise and not navigating all over the place and straying from topic to topic and trying to appeal to internet fans and meta stuff. It was just all over the place. And you had Jarrett saying things that just made it seem like he had a delusional version of his own career that didn't land, and it took away a lot of what people liked about him with the Owen Cup. I would argue is him coming out and going, I can get down in the dirt with you and be even more crass, and I'm going to bring people who aren't public figures into it and talk about your mom having all these crass sexual encounters with, your dad, that your dad paid to conceive you, and that your partner is out back when you're wrestling with. That's not Jeff Jarrett's brand. It was him trying to out cool and out insult Jeff Jarrett, and this is not Rock and John Cena. Jarrett's neither of them. So I just thought it was, bad judgment. So Zach, my criticism very specifically along the way is, if you're going to tell this story and it's going to end with MJF retiring Jarrett, there's a way to tell that story and not make the mistakes they made along the way. And I also strongly, and I think the announcing lets down storylines constantly in this company. Excalibur's reaction to the recap of what happened on Collision with Mariah May and Tony Storm was to me like a really it was illustrative of a major issue with him, in that he recapped what happened with language that sounded like he was telling people on a TV commercial about TVs being on sale. He didn't actually come across as having a genuine human reaction to the journey that we had been on and what we saw. And I wrote this in my TV report tonight. It came across like he was reading a script for a TV commercial for there's a big sale on TVs at Hank's TV shop. Like it's just, that's his tone is constantly that. He said, Tony Storm had a performance of a lifetime, but you'll have to repeat the performance on Saturday, February 15th. And it's like, is there a human being behind that mask? Like, just talk off script like you're not an announcer, just pitching things. Like, Tony, what we just watched shocked me. Tony Storm, I didn't know what to think of Tony Storm, but that was a performance of that whole journey. Like, stay away from the cliches. Like, it had so many people fooled. And then talk about what this is supposed to mean, but they don't know, so they can't say. This has to shake Mariah May to the core. Mariah thought she had Tony Storm figured out. Mariah May prides herself on being a step ahead of everybody. And in this case, Tony Storm messed with her head, and that's going to be on their minds when the bell rings. That was, like, whatever the storyline is, that was a really good example of when people talk about Excalibur's like announcing not really resonating with them, and it just feels like he's just in announcer mode, just talking like this with a certain cadence, talking about stuff. It didn't land. And to me, one of the biggest things, like Jeff Jarrett losing his world title shot or Tony Storm revealing, stop being in commercial pitchman mode and talk to us like you would talk to people that you're have a common interest in and you have thoughts on it. And it didn't come across. And I thought they, especially Excalibur in that moment, let the storyline down.
Yeah, they kind of dropped the ball there. And they need all the help they can get to tell that story. And that was kind of lax as well.
Yeah. And Zach says, I agree with your point about Excalibur tonight. Zach Barber says this, but I will say performance of a lifetime were Tony's words he just repeated. I agree with, totally. But like, come up with your own words. Like, that's the problem, is it felt like he was saying the official lines, and I didn't feel like I was getting thoughts that he conjured in his brain right before he said it. It felt like just, here's a script of what I'm gonna say, and say it like a pitchman. He talks like an announcer all the time. He never talks like a human being, and it sort of works like if you're calling a hockey game, but in between periods, the hockey announcer doesn't talk to his color commentator in between periods like he's calling a power play and a shot on goal. And Excalibur doesn't break out of that mode. And it's hard, I think people have a hard time pinpointing a weakness with Excalibur because he has some strengths, but it is just getting out of announcer voice mode and just thinking about what he says as he's saying it, instead of it being something that just seems like it's words coming out that was preordained to say. Point made on that. So I want to weave back to the Jarrett thing and the MJF thing. So MJF tonight, I had said a couple weeks ago and wrote this too in my reports. MJF, I think his strength is going to be when he's interviewed backstage, Darrin, by Renee Young. Less is more with him. And I think, Kevin Owens has been doing great work. And I think Kevin Owens is a model for what MJF can be if he's more curated and focused and not all over the place. I thought that interview with Renee was a really good example of something I want to see more of with MJF. And I get he's paid a lot, and then he gets flown to these arenas, and the feeling is, well, I got to put in my 12 minutes of TV time, and I want to look at minute by minutes and see that it paid off, that I'm earning my money. Jericho used to call himself the demigod, the demographic, bragging about demographics and stuff. But I just don't want these discursive promos from MJF where it's like he's fitting everything in. It's like, that's the first draft, and now whittle it down. And I thought with Renee, it felt like I have a few points to make and I made them, but I'm not going to belabor the point, and I'm not going to go for, I'm going to say something controversial so then I can go to my phone and hit refresh and everyone's talking about me. It just felt like he served the storyline well. I thought he was in a mode, and he looked like a cocky heel wandering around backstage, and I thought bumping into Hangman felt authentic. And I thought that was an example of something almost literally specifically that I think would be good for MJF. And tonight I think validated my wish, which is more backstage interviews, playing off an announcer, and keep them shorter.
Yeah, and it helps that Renee is good at what she does as well, so that helps rein that in. But yeah, I would agree with MJF. Sometimes he's a little bit far off there, just veering off just to say stuff to shock people just for the shock value of it, and they need to rein that in a lot. And if they need to keep him backstage and have him play off of an announcer, so be it. And I thought this was a step in the right direction for him as well, because when he's unhinged, like the Jarrett thing a couple weeks ago, You see how that winds up going, and he could really benefit from cutting out some of the excesses, and so this was a good job, and I hope that they noted that.
Yeah, like he can be crass and go into the gutter
unnecessarily.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like he's too, he's too talented to have to do that. Like it's hack. Like wrestlers who do that aren't as talented and gifted as MJF is, and he can, but he shouldn't because he doesn't have to. And he's a case where less is more. You know, I mean, again, you know, Kevin Owens is not belaboring points. He's not doing a bunch of, you know, meta stuff for the sake of meta. And you know, it's just what he's doing. It's like he's a model right now. And Zach Barber agrees. He says MJF was great in that backstage segment. He didn't need to go into his Don Rickles routine. Still, you can't relegate him to backstage. Not about first of all, disagree with your framing. It's not being relegated to be backstage. That is an important part of the mix. Backstage interviews that are concise are good because you want to have different lengths and different contexts and settings to your promos. There are times when it calls for you to be standing in the ring and interacting with the crowd and having a major, but it should feel big. But other times there's going to be weeks where, yeah, he flew out, he's paid well, but the best thing for the show and his character is someone holding a mic, asking him a question, and he answers it. And that's it. And this, I think this is, you know, enter this into the evidence envelope folder as evidence for that argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to Bruce Lee from Honolulu, Hawaii, PWTorch contributor who emailed, formerly of PWTorch NXT. He goes, "We're about to hit a cold front with massive amounts of rain here in Honolulu overnight. And tomorrow I'm going to be bundled up with temperatures dropping into the 70s. Wow. I see what you did there. I'm emailing during the way too damn long Ricochet AR Fox match that hasn't ended. That will be my second topic, I guess. But first, why the hell does it take 3 damn men to beat Jeff Jarrett? Another good point I didn't bring up. That should have been a 5-minute match tops, more than a 3-minute squash. So a pause there. Well, no, this is actually related. Second, and building off the last point, what is Tony Khan's obsession with every match being 50-50, a 50-50 10-minute match? Why is Rick taking so damn long to beat what amounts to be the pro wrestling version of a role-playing journeyman? Every time I watch Dynamite, I watch at least 2 matches that should be cut in half in match length so that there's room for others, like more time for the women's division. NBA teams are blown out by 20, 30, 40, and yes, even 50 points. So why are squashes seemingly an anathema to Khan? Thanks for taking the rant. Hope you two gentlemen stay well and safe. I will say I was thinking that about Claudio and Jarrett, that Claudio is the number 2 guy in the Death Riders behind Moxley. I mean, what, maybe Pac? I mean, but you know, Yuta lasts a long time too. But I'm like, Claudio should be Jarrett. Like, if Claudio was, if his credibility is sacrificed, that he can't beat Jarrett clean and quickly, relatively quickly, I don't think that's a price worth paying for whatever story they're going for with MJF, quote, retiring, as Zach says, retiring MJF. In the end, if MJF had interfered early in the match, so we just didn't know how long Jarrett would have lasted, if you want to protect him a little bit, you could have done that. And I actually crossed my mind, Darrin, that Tony is trying to avoid doing an interference finish, and he thought that was noble. But in the end, it made it seem like Claudio can't beat Jarrett, and a 57-year-old guy who has a delusional dream of being a credible, winning a world title fair and square at this stage of his career, now is sort of being validated at the expense of the number 2 guy, or tied for 2 in your top heel faction. I just don't think that's got an eye in the big picture.
Yeah, and that is one they definitely could have kept shorter. I don't know if you could make the argument that they didn't necessarily have to interfere, that they just did it because they're just bullies or whatever. I guess you could say that. But I did want to, in that email was a point I didn't want to escape while I'm thinking about it, is that they do need to devote more time to that women's division, because it was up and running, and then it kind of got derailed around the time of the tournament, the Continental Classic, because just by sheer airtime they had to run the tournament matches. And it seems like the last few weeks they've only been doing like one women's match, and they've got a lot of depth in that division now. And with Rampage being gone, you really only have 2 women's matches a week, which is a shame. That's a hook that they could use to get viewers. They've got a pretty deep roster, and we just never see them, and that's been pretty frustrating.
And one of the keys, if you're going to put the women on TV, and it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you don't develop the characters beyond, magical girl, and if you don't know Japan wrestling, you're not in the clubhouse. This is, you should know. You should be watching stuff in your free time to care about these people. No, your job in canon of AEW is to tell a story and get us invested in them. The other stuff can be, sprinkled in as sort of a backstory for context, but you got to tell the story. On your own TV show, and women just appear and disappear. Harley Cameron playing, playing and singing and stuff like that. It's fun and it's amusing, but it's sort of mid-card stuff. But it's not character development where you can turnkey that into a top TV match. So you have to have other women that you're giving serious pushes to, where we have an emotional investment in them succeeding or failing. We know what their journey is. We see their backstory in front of us. It's not something that we needed to watch something else in order to care about. And there's way too much of that going on in AEW, where because Tony Khan knows and the people in his echo chamber bubble on social media know, then he thinks that's what we need to do. And Excalibur knows, so he can talk about it. He'll fill people in who don't know. They need to tell stories within Dynamite and Collision proper, and they do in a lot of ways, but the women's division doesn't get enough segments. So the self-fulfilling prophecy is the viewership isn't good, and Tony's very focused on minute-by-minute numbers. So he sees numbers go down, and he doesn't see it's because he didn't put in the work ahead of time to get people interested in some of the women who he does feature on TV. It's not the fault of the women, it's the fault of the booking, and not, like you say, Darrin, shorten these matches, or as Bruce said, shorten the matches and give more time to character development for these women consistently so they don't show up on TV and then disappear. And one of the crutches of AEW booking is, we got a main event idea for Nyla Rose, so we're going to have her win a match on Rampage the week before her Dynamite match where she gets a title shot. We're going to have a 4-way elimination match. And that's going to on Collision, which is going to be justification for then it main eventing Dynamite. And that's not enough. Sakazaki needed to be more involved in Dynamite and Collision leading up to her getting a title shot if they want people to be invested in care. So, Darrin.
Yeah, she should have had some momentum, but I mean, where's the airtime? Rampage is gone, and they're down to one women's match a week, so they just threw in the Collision thing out of nowhere, and that doesn't give a lot of depth. And then when the match comes on, people are disappointed, so they might reflect in the ratings, unfortunately. So yeah, you got to do that work to build up and add some character depth and stuff. Looks like they're trying to do something with Harley Cameron, who's somebody I think that could be a big benefit to them, but you've got to, instead of just doing random segments, you got to get some emotional investment, and maybe that's what they're trying to do with Deanna and Taya Valkyrie. So it looks like they're headed towards something, but I want to see that momentum going, because you're wasting a lot of potential with that deep division, and I really want to see that get going. Yeah, yep. It can use more consistent attention. We'll go to JB from Detroit emailing. He goes, I'd like to see more interaction between Will and Kenny with Takeshita and Fletcher before Grand Slam. Yeah. Takeshita and Fletcher need to be built up more to feel on par with Will and Kenny, and they certainly have the ability to get to that point. I don't know what they do. I'm just trying to think of, like, in the realm of how Tony Khan books, or just outside the normal framework. How do you get at this late stage with a couple weeks to go? How do you get Takeshita and Fletcher, more over? Because the Callis family doesn't feel like it has a clear-cut top leader. Moxley clearly the leader, of the Death Riders. Yeah. Like, I don't feel like people think, it's clearly Takeshita. Takeshita feels the way he's been portrayed in AEW. I think it can change, is the second guy. You look at Fletcher, you think he's second or third. Who's the top guy? They haven't really told that story well. And Ospreay and Omega are top X in AEW. So it does feel like a couple deputies as a setup for the real tough opponents. It's the kind of the just the vibe you have about this. And so I think JB's onto something. Yeah, I would agree with that. And we haven't talked about it, but also the thing with Adam Copeland and FTR is kind of a pivot, because I thought this was the opportunity to start bringing in like the young guys who were going to be the ones that ran off the Death Riders, but it seems that we've taken this detour to Copeland and FTR, which is, I mean, okay, because that seems to be the focus headed towards is it Dynasties, and that's the next pay-per-view, and it's fine, but I thought this would be the opportunity to start bringing in like your Ospreays, Darby's, but Darby's off, I guess, climbing the mountain or whatever, or even Orange Cassidy. So, yeah, Jack Perry or something like that. Garcia.
We talk about women just sort of disappearing. Somebody, Sadler version 3 said, when AEW pushes new women to title level, they lose the championship and then they fall into obscurity for some reason. Britt, Thunder, Nyla, Hayter, and Cheetah. You have that issue with a lot of people who fans got invested in on the men's side too. You know, I mean, they don't really update you on Ring of Honor. Like, it's not really canon very often on Dynamite. And there's a passing, someone will show up with the TV title and then lose and then whatever, like Commander. So to me, like, what happened to Sammy Guevara? Why is he off TV? Where's Jack Perry been? Where is Darby? Like, that should tell that story on TV. And it's like they don't want to tell people he's going to be gone, so he just goes poof. What happened to Ricky Starks? Well, I don't know if you want to tell that story, but like, there's a pattern of wrestlers who just fall off the radar, and it happens too much. And I know it's sort of like, well, we don't want you thinking about people aren't going to be around, but it is kind of weird that Jack Perry, like, for instance, when the Bucks left, he just is gone. And I don't know. I think there's a pattern there for AEW viewers, which is you can get invested in some of these people, but when we decide they're not going to be on TV or they have something else going on or they get injured, we're not even going to update you on them. And we got an update on Chuck Taylor, you know, because he was part of some little angle. But I mean, that's the kind of thing you can do. Like, give us an update on them.
Yeah. I wonder if they would benefit from a brand split so you can focus on some of these people as opposed to going back and forth. I think that is a big key. At least people would know when they're going to live shows who they're going to see. And I think that's really important. Kind of like the whole Raw SmackDown dynamic. And I don't know why I don't see the downside in doing that. Because I think that would kind of focus things, start giving people more reps, more airtime. I think that's a step that they really need to take, and I think that would resolve some of these issues that we discussed. Yeah,
funny you bring that up, because Rich Fan and I recorded everything, the VIP Everything podcast before Dynamite. I haven't posted it yet, but we talked about that in the roster split, and I came up with kind of a way to do it where you didn't have a sense of a B, you know, like you're on the B show if you're on Collision. I won't repeat all that here, but I just in general, I think what the point you made is one of them, is one that I made today and have made before and others have, which is people have complained who have called in going, I don't know when I buy a Dynamite ticket who I'm going to see.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know who you're going to see. And I mean, when you think about tonight's show, you paid to see Ospreay and Mercedes. Were those like the two main top stars, would you say, who wrestled? Jeff Jarrett, MJF interfering, Kenny making a save. I mean, you know, but from if you just strip away what they did, but someone who had a significant role, either in a match, a promo, or an angle, and you look at the depth chart of who you paid to see, there's a lot of people's favorite wrestlers who only appeared on the big screen or didn't appear at all. And I don't know, you know, I mean, with attendance problems with AEW, and I know they don't do this a lot, but MJF would hate me for saying this, and Hangman would hate me. I mean, wrestlers but how about doing dark matches after every Dynamite? You know, like, there's something to be said for that formula. Yeah. Like, Dynamite goes off the air, but the people who paid money to go are watching, you know, MJF wrestle. It can be a tag match if you don't want these wrestlers taking a bunch of bumps. You can kind of split the time or whatever, but have an all-star tag match with big name talent that you give as a bonus off air to people who pay money to go there. You can fit every star on every TV show, and I don't think you should. But yeah, I think you want people to pay money to go to these shows with dwindling attendance. They were barely over 2,000 tonight. You want fans who are buying tickets to go, you know what, even if someone's not on TV, I'm going to get to see some star power after the show ends, and it's going to feel exclusive to me. It's worth my parking money, my gas money, my time, and the ticket money, especially, and all the fees, compared to just sitting and watching on my giant 4K TV. I mean, it's easier to watch wrestling and better to watch wrestling at home than it's ever been because TV screens are awesome now and they're cheap. You got to give people extra. And if I'm AEW, I'd consider that. I mean, it would probably take a year for it to sink in. But if people start hearing on the internet about good matches at the end, like if you have a bunch of wrestlers who can't actually wrestle weekly, what's going on? Like MJF should be out there wrestling every week or, twice a month in dark matches. Like he can use the reps. He's young. I don't know. It's just, the Bucks the Bucks feel like they're at a place where, and they're beat up. There's a lot of mileage on them, but push wrestlers to the top who can work. Same with the women. Like just Mariah May should be out there working dark matches once or twice a month at the end of Dynamite or Collision. Give people extra.
Yeah, and there's even value of people seeing the big ring entrance and people coming down to interact with the crowd in addition to a match. And I think there's a lot of value that an exclusive to that city, and that's something to definitely consider as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the easier solutions to try to increase attendance is, fans in the building are going to see an exclusive match. And when they go home, they feel like they saw more star power. We hear complaints about that.
Yeah.
All right. Up next from JB from Detroit. Referees looking like idiots continues to be a problem in AEW. Bryce Remsburg spends 30 to 40 seconds yelling at Wheeler Yuta inside a ring as Jarrett avoids a chair shot from Claudio, only to be attacked by Moxley. Went to competent referee tell Yuta to leave if he doesn't. And if he doesn't after 10 to 20 seconds, there's a disqualification. There's also Lance Archer wasn't kicked out. And the announcers were even a little baffled by that. Like, I guess he's allowing him to stay after scolding him. There are incidents on Collision, I think, in the main event. I mean, there's so many instances. You can throw a dart blindfolded and you're going to hit a ref acting stupid on Dynamite or Collision in AEW. It is really overdone, Darren. And it feels like a crutch, and it's sort of, I mean, it is not unique to AEW for the AEW loyalists. No question about it. But even like the pre-bell attacks where there's an attack before the bell rings, in WWE, the referees almost always, there's one or two instances where they didn't. They almost always go to the wrestler who got beat up and say, "Are you ready to go? Are you ready to go?" And the wrestler's like, "Oh, give me a second. They stand up, take a breath. They go, "I'm ready." And then the ref goes ring the bell. It should be in the hands of the wrestler who's attacked to decide how much time off they need to recover. It's like a low blow in MMA. The fighter gets time to recover from a low kick. The ref doesn't just reward the low kick by saying, "Well, stand up and get punched." AEW does it all the time. It is such a trope for them. And WWE's cleaned that up, and they should. And that's a referee acting stupid. You're rewarding bad behavior, And it's I talk about it all the time because AEW does it all the time. The referee's calling for the match to start, rewarding a heel. I put it in all caps in my TV reports. The referee once again rewards a pre-match attack. I don't get how that's still happening, Darren. Referees looking stupid in AEW. I think you should have some structure that feels competent. Yeah. And then, and AEW doesn't come across if it's real, it doesn't feel like there's a competent authority structure. And I think that's what's it's more, it feels like a heel is achieving something if they get away with something, if there's some sort of competent structure, and there isn't.
Yeah, it's one of those things that chips away at your credibility. They do have some more glaring issues, but that's something that definitely does not help, and they need to work on those type of building blocks, those basics that help support the rest of the company. So yeah, that's something they need to work on.
Yeah. Like if my garbage disposal in my kitchen is broken, I need to fix that. But if my refrigerator has some smudges on it, I'll still wipe it up before the garbage disposal gets fixed. Like, it's okay to clean up things that aren't make or break because it all adds up. And the thing is, what people don't realize when we sort of like, and by the way, the referee stupidity is an ongoing issue. It's not like a little nitpick, but wrestling companies are cleaning up things constantly. There's 50 things on every wrestling show that, or I mean, it's overstating, things on every wrestling show that they're paying attention to, that they're making look good, that could look bad. They just aren't, there's just certain things that are repeat offenders that they need to also clean up. And if they stop doing all those things that they are cleaning up and doing better, the show would be completely fall apart and be even worse. So, in those ways, so just, clean up the little stuff. If it's there, do it. If there's this, it doesn't have to be the most important thing to still be worth doing. All right, number 4 from JB from Detroit. Swerve seems super hot right now, and based off recent crowd reactions, I think it would be wise to get him back in the title picture sooner rather than later. By the way, when I talk about who should be wrestling every If MJF doesn't want to do it or he's in his contract, he doesn't have to, whatever. Swerve. He's let Swerve work a dark match every week. Do you know how many people would pay if word got out that they got to see Swerve Strickland wrestle every time they went to Dynamite or Collision? Like, that would help ticket sales. He's a star. Yeah. People pay to see stars, as you said, Darren, the ring entrance, cheering them. It's underrated how much, and we see it with Jey Uso, he's a perfect example, how much fans want to feel that they're part of communicating to the wrestler how much they like them by cheering for them on their ring entrance. That's why people cheer at football games and chant their team names. Individually, it doesn't make a difference, but collectively it does.
Sure.
Make people think when you do local advertising, Swerve Strickland will be in action. You can't announce it nationally because then people expect it to be on TV. Or just let people discover it over time through the internet buzz that AEW always delivers it's only a 2-hour Dynamite. You can do another 40 minutes before you leave the building. Do 2 banger main events every week. Let that be the brand of Dynamite and Collision. You get 2 bangers at the end with top stars. That's going to help turn around attendance.
Yeah. And give those younger guys some reps, and you can have a fast-paced match, Swerve against one of the younger guys that you want to bring up. And it's not like you're burning out a main event or anything. You don't have to have Swerve against Okada. You can have Swerve against, one of the top flight guys or something like that.
I think that's valid. I would argue to have him against main event guys. WWE did it for decades. They had their top guys against each other. And you know what? When I say banger, I'll withdraw that a little bit. Go through the motions. Like, have a match where you're not doing a bunch of crazy bumps. I'm like serious. Have Swerve against Okada be a dark match. You're not burning it out if only 3,000 people see it. Yeah. But you're helping build for the next time you come to that town. People go, I saw Swerve against Okada. That was not on TV. I got to cheer for Swerve. I got to laugh at Okada doing the bitch thing. And it was fun. And nobody saw it but us who were in the building. 9 months later, you go back to that town. Some of those people are going to buy a ticket again because they feel like they got to see something nobody else saw. If you put Swerve against, I don't know, AR Fox, I don't think people are. I think people are going to leave. Honestly, I think people. I'll beat the traffic. Like, put Tony. How many matches with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes did we talk about? Tony never got because he took too much time to feature them. That was like a criticism of AEW early on. Just put these top guys against each other off camera. Oh, someone's going to film it and put it on the internet. Who cares? Sell tickets. Don't worry about the internet. I'd put top guys against each other every week. Two main event matches, pay-per-view caliber matches, not in banger effort. They don't have to take crazy bumps. They should learn how to work in a way that gets crowd reaction. It's crowd pleasing, but it's a house show match. It's a dark match, and it doesn't wear them out that much. I don't think it hurts. I think it's greatly overrated. If you tell a good story, it doesn't matter how many times somebody wrestled each other in a dark match or at a house show. No one's buying a pay-per-view. No one's going to not buy a pay-per-view because it's the 17th time this year that 2 people wrestled. If the first 16 times it was off camera and there was no storyline and it isn't really part of canon, you're still going to want to see the one that they know matters on pay-per-view.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Number 6, I like the idea of AEW close-up interview series with Renee. I'd like to see it expand outside the Death Rider storyline to see what they can do with it creatively. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a positive. I just don't think it's super important to have a YouTube sit-down long-form interview series when it comes to what is ailing AEW's growth. It's not a negative. I just don't know that it really would end up making a difference. Because the last thing I want is, as Cody Rhodes said, I quote him all the time, you shouldn't have to watch other stuff. You shouldn't have to watch our shoulder content to know what's going on Dynamite. I'm worried that Tony go, well, now that's a new assignment for all our viewers. Watch a 45-minute to an hour and a half podcast with Renee so that you know what's going on. But can you pull clips from it and put it on TV? Sure. Then that works.
That's important because that does add some character depth. And I think the segment tonight did a little bit to kind of explain that. And that's always helpful.
Yeah. I like this. Still JB. I like the announce team is now emphasizing the idea that Jay White is a defensive or counter wrestler. That was a big part of his New Japan in-ring persona, and I think it goes a long way to explaining who he is as an overall character as well. Sean Radican wrote a great column a couple years ago in the PWTorch newsletter, however long ago it was, on Jay White's arrival and how he's used to New Japan and how AEW didn't seem to be framing him that way. I don't think you have to frame him the way you did in New Japan, but if that's going to be his ring style and that's a story and it worked in New Japan, can it work in AEW? And if so, tell the story. A lot of people have been pining for that. So Jay White as a pushed wrestler right now, Darren. What do you think of how they're utilizing him. And like, should it take him? Should he? I mean, Wheeler isn't a top guy. He's kind of, portrayed as a bit of the lackey. Thoughts on that specifically tonight too?
Yeah, Wheeler. I mean, he's a push guy, right? He's not the top level, but he's somebody that
he's not JD McDonough. So... He's not JD McDonough.
Agreed. Yeah, they're getting there with him. He had kind of a rough start, and then they had the whole MJF feud way back when, but I think he's starting to rebuild from that, and I like the direction that he's going. They're showing that he's in the top echelon, and they got a ways to go with him, but I think they're on the right course, and they're doing the small things, talking about him being a defensive wrestler and all that, the little nuances that are going to get him over to the audiences. So yeah, I just want to see him in a good focused feud as well. The one with the Death Riders he's kind of an outsider in that feud, but I want to see him get focused on something of his own. And not sure. I know that they teased the Guns coming back, and not to get sidetracked on that, I do like that they're promoting them coming back, because I think that team has a lot of value. Didn't seem like they were getting back with Jay White, so maybe they're going out on their own. And perhaps it's best for Jay to be, because when he was with them, they were kind of had a little bit of comedy going to him, and I think Jay works better by himself as a serious act. So
totally agree. Yeah, the I don't know what the music was on the video announcing the return of Austin and Colton Gunn.
Was it a slowed down version of their theme, maybe?
Yeah, it was weird. It felt like it should be on like a lingerie commercial or something. It was like it had a weird vibe to me. I don't know. I don't know what they were going for. Maybe it's something I don't know about. But I'm glad they're
where are these lingerie commercials at?
Yeah. I think Jay White on his own or not being part. I think Juice playing him being a straight man to Juice is fine. I think the Guns are that whole thing, and another derivative of Bullet Club. It just felt like people love Bullet Club and have a closet full of T-shirts were groaning when it's like another Bullet Club version. AEW, come on, let's create some new stuff instead of live in the past. I think it was pretty close to consensus. As far as YouTube video that JB brought up, Zach Barber in the chat said, it's only 20 minutes, Wade. It was fantastic. It's 2025. Utilize YouTube to your benefit. I said it's not a negative. What I was pausing to kind of process is, do I trust AEW to have shoulder content that isn't a substitution for shortening some of the matches that should be shorter, like Jay White beating Wheeler Yuta, I would argue. Any match that AR Fox is in on TV against a pushed wrestler probably shouldn't go 8 minutes, but it's the format of the show. But I would take some of that stuff from YouTube and reformat it in a way that's TV friendly, instead of having really good stuff that's, it's like their pay-per-view preview shows. People said they're better than anything they do in Dynamite, and almost nobody watched them when they aired after Rampage. So they're capable of it. It's just their priorities sometimes seem a little mixed up. Okay, number 8. I love, this is JB's email. I love the aura of Marina Shafir and the badass appeal she brings. I do too. But what is her purpose? I've been waiting for another female wrestler to be introduced in the storyline at some point to engage Marina, but it's been months now. At one point, I think that Adam Copeland might bring in Beth Phoenix, but now I'm not so sure. Marina Shafir is one of my favorite characters. She says nothing, but she's so believable in what she does, and I think she adds an aura to the Death Riders. I think it's a fair question. Is she going to wrestle? What's her point? What role does she play? I'd flesh that out a little bit more instead of just having her looking angry all the time and intimidating. But we don't. Yeah, there should be some sort of canon storyline role that she plays, that she contributes in the Death Riders.
Yeah, I would like to get that fleshed out as well. And I noticed when they were leaving the ring, she kept looking back. And I wonder if that was alluding to something, because she did it twice, or if that's just part of the character just surveying the scene. It looked like there was a little bit more to it, though. And I wonder if that's going to play out in the future. She kept looking back at the ring, I guess, when Jarrett was in there laid out. So I don't know, maybe there's a little bit more coming from her as well. I know that they had her and Willow square off a bit also, so I was hoping to see her in the ring, but that never transpired.
Yeah,
a lot of ways you can go with that.
And I think we're at a point now, Darren, where people would be into that. Like, oh, Marina Shafir's, and nobody cared about Shafir matches until this new version of her in the Death Riders. When we talk about giving more time to the women's division, and like have Moxley like proudly put her, like point her to the ring and go beat up this person, go beat up that person. And I mean, there are fights that they could pick against women who fit their mission statement, or like are what they're fighting in the mission statement. It doesn't have to be just the male wrestlers; it can be female wrestlers too. Zach said, by the way, she explains it in the close-up. She's guarding the title like a mom guarding her baby. Boy, Zach, did you not just make my point for me? Oh, there's something you saw in a YouTube video that they didn't incorporate into TV canon that explains her character, and you just proved my point. Why I'm a little hesitant to say, yeah, do more YouTube stuff to have pertinent information that builds character framework, and it never makes it to TV. I agree, take advantage of YouTube, but don't do it at the expense of a self-contained cable show that's your main driver and your main revenue source, by the way. That's why they're still in business. It's because of the TV money, not YouTube money. Use YouTube to drive people to TV, but the TV rights fees, it's that and pay-per-view. I mean, and pay-per-view is driven by people watching the TV show. So make the TV show self-contained and compelling, and don't have overly long lopsided matches. Number 9, I love the idea that Toni Storm was playing the long con with Mariah May. It makes her return as the OG Toni Storm completely makes sense and makes her look like the rare, intelligent babyface by playing mind games with Mariah. I got bad news for you, JB. The mind games didn't work. Mariah May's phased. Number 10, I'm excited about the return of the Guns. The tag division has actually been looking up the last several weeks with Hurt Syndicate, Hounds of Hell, the return of the Guns, FTR versus Death Riders, etc. Somebody mentioned in the chat that Hurt Syndicate should have been on the show. Like be in the Hurt Syndicate business. They won the titles. I mean, I don't know. It just again, when you talk about why shorten matches, maybe so you can do something with Hurt Syndicate or film something last week with them that feels fresh, a video package or something. So they stay on our minds.
Video package
on Tonight Show?
Yes.
Oh, what did they? Am I forgetting, or did I fast forward past?
Just kind of recap the title win.
Oh yeah, they did the recap.
And then they threw out like a challenge or something.
Oh, did they? Okay. Then I stand corrected. I didn't. You know what? I probably was a little behind on the DVR or on the show and missed that they had fresh material on it. So the chat threw me off. I trusted the chat, whoever you were. It's my fault, but I'm going to throw the chat person on the bus. Also, on Collision last Saturday, Don Callis hinted at a new member to his family and at his family meeting. Any ideas as to who the new member could be? Could it be a returning wrestler or a debuting wrestler? I was thinking it might be Speedball Mike Bailey from TNA, as it was heavily reported his contract expired at the end of 2024. He hasn't been seen in TNA since. Darren, good question for you.
That's an option I not heard of. I was reading. I did not come up with this, but I read it on someone's social media. I think Blue Sky or whatever it's called. Someone suggested Kota Ibushi, and so really turning one of his best friends against Kenny Omega.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That would be a worthwhile. With all due respect to Speedball Mike Bailey, that's not someone you tease as a big reveal. That's someone you introduce in a different way. But if you're going to build up a mystery, it can't be a person that isn't a household name to AEW fans. So go to Bushi. I mean, that history is canon on AEW Dynamite. You could tell that story. Wow.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
From someone on social media.
No. You spoke it out loud here first.
Yes, right.
That's what I meant. Okay, JB says, it seems as though a lot more effort has been put into Collision the last few weeks, and this Saturday's card looks fairly strong. Yeah, I mean, one person in the chat said Dynamite felt like a long Collision or a long commercial for Collision, which was they said was kind of weird. You know what though? Sometimes you got to put the shock paddles to the chest to to get a heart beating again on a show, and that's kind of, I think they're maybe over promoting Collision because people tune out Collision hype because they feel like it's not that big of a deal. I would expect Collision to feel more important with Rampage not there. Like, one, you can just put the 2 best hours on there instead of spreading it out into 3. But, you're not, the viewership-wise, people who want something beyond Dynamite now have one place to go for it, for a first-run cable show with first run matches. So I thought Saturday's Collision was refreshing. I love the setting at Daly's Place and the live vibe. I think wrestlers there's a little bit of a different adrenaline when you're live. And I think it was the type of show where if you watched it, you're thinking, oh, I want to tune in next Saturday. This feels like a more important show. I think a well executed, I put that in all caps, not a poorly executed, but a well executed roster split would be helpful to make it feel like must watch. But yeah, Chris Johnson, I mentioned earlier, it felt like half the show was a promo for Collision, which seems backwards. If TNT is going, we need better numbers, and we dropped Rampage, give us some better numbers. I mean, maybe there was an edict, or maybe Tony just on his own looked and said, now that Rampage is gone, let's make this mean more. But it does feel that way. One of the keys is you got to show Dynamite viewers you missed something by not watching Saturday. This was something significant that happened, and I don't even mind a little, not a guilt trip, but sort of like conveying that people should feel a sense of regret. If you didn't watch Collision, here's something you missed. And I don't think you should think, well, now people don't have to watch Collision because you recap it. People would rather see things live and in full form than a brief recap. But I think you got to let people know that they missed stuff that is newsworthy and significant.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I noticed another thing that they did tonight, kind of to stress the importance of things. I don't notice that they've ever done this before, but towards the last portion of the show, they recapped like the Kenny Omega thing.
Yes. Yep.
And something else, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they did it twice. They did callbacks earlier to the show. I think twice.
Okay. And to really get that into the audience's mind that, oh, this is a big thing that happened. If you missed the first part of the show also, like, oh, yeah, I did miss something. And that's something that you need to do to drive home the point of what was really important during the show. And finally starting to do that kind of stuff. So it's those little touches that are very important.
And I think with announcers who have credibility with the audience and connect with them in a human way, subtext there, I think you would want those announcers to say, I'm still reeling from what we saw earlier, or I'm still celebrating what we saw earlier, or can you believe what happened earlier? Tony or Tez, now that an hour's gone by, I'm wondering what's going through Kenny Omega's head after he got beat down, or what's going through Don Callis' head when he thought he took out Kenny Omega, but he didn't. Kenny Omega showed resilience, but now we're worried about Kenny Omega, and they went after his diverticulitis. Like, I said this recently on post shows. I think AEW needs like somebody with a journalist mentality on their producing. Like, what's happening is newsworthy. So you want a reporter's mentality of, here's the lead sentence, here's what's important, here's why it matters, here's what our day 2 story would be, but it's hour 2. Like, what's the follow-up to what happened that was big in hour 1? Bring a journalist reporter type mentality and go, okay, we wrote the day 1 story in the first hour. Another hour's gone by, or 3 days in the case of Collision, or 4 days in case of the gap between Collision and Dynamite. What would be the follow-up story? There's the same day, the newspaper story, or the one that goes online after the game, and it's like, here's the score, here's how they won or lost, and here was an injury. The day 2 story is, how did they lose? How long will this athlete be out of action? What will the ramifications be for the team going forward? Who will step up? So if you have that kind of reporter's mentality, you can apply that to how you tell a story in a wrestling show. So it's not just like some people reply to me saying recap stuff and they just dumb down my argument in some straw man argument, which is, well, why would you just repeat stuff like that? No, you reframe stuff. You present it in a new way. You add a new layer of context and reflect on it and react to it. I think people would be into that, but it serves the dual purpose. Like you said, Darren, also, if you didn't tune into the first 20 minutes, now you know, but if you did, here's some follow-up thoughts and analysis.
Right. Yeah, I know. So they're doing those little touches that are so important. So that is encouraging. But I mean, they got a lot to fix, but it's encouraging that someone has noticed that they need to do those kind of touches.
Yeah. Standard Deviation said, it's smart to create an expectation for something important to happen on Collision when it goes head-to-head with a WWE event. Over time, it'll fortify the hardcores who choose Collision over WWE. 250,000 people chose Collision over WWE, who had access to it, because everybody has access to Saturday's Main Event because it's a broadcast network. And if you have TNT, you almost for sure have NBC on your cable package. And 1.4 million plus Peacock viewers watched Saturday's main event, but it's not nothing. I mean, it's not close, but it's not nothing. And there were some Peacock, or there were some Max viewers too. So,
Max, right.
Numbers aren't great for Max compared to Peacock and Netflix, because Peacock is so established as a place you go for PLEs. WWE fans are very used to going to Peacock for content. So I don't know how many people watch on Peacock, but it was a more significant percentage than those who watched Collision on Max on Saturday night. But nevertheless, they have some people. But yeah, it's like dark matches at TVs. If they do them, it will communicate to the fans it's worth tuning in. And if Collision is a good show opposite of Saturday's main event, and people look at SNME and go, as WWE going through the motions, I kind of knew it was going to happen, and whatever. If you're lean a little AEW or you're kind of split, if the best collisions are opposite of SNME, people are going to start noticing that. Now it's only 4 times a year or whatever, so you don't want to build a brand only on just wait till Saturday's main event's on. We'll make Collision good. You want to make Collision good every week, but don't wave the white flag, I think is what Standard Deviation is saying. Finally, from JB, was it seemingly random and thrown together Mercedes Mone title defense against Sakazaki really worth a Dynamite main event? As I always love the show, go VIP. We definitely covered that earlier, and my answer was no, or it needed more build to earn its position, and I stand by that. I'm looking at the show here. Anything else, Darren, you want to bring up from this? We didn't talk about the New York Minute that Taz lamented lasted longer than a minute, which I got a kick out of. Are we getting a Big Bill Chris Jericho breakup quickly or slowly or not at all?
It's coming. I think we're close. Maybe by the next Dynasty, I think we'll be there.
Do you like that? Like, Big Bill a babyface, or is it Jericho? I mean, Jericho's sort of the heelish one going, you need to listen to me better and learn better lessons. So I think Big Bill is somebody, I'd be pushing him over Jeff Jarrett. I think there's something there with him. That's low-hanging fruit, I guess, but
yeah, he's getting a big reaction, or he has gotten a big reaction at some events, and I think he's somebody that's ready to break out on their own, and people will get. And I would have never thought I would have said that, but I think he's reached that point where I think he's got some potential to get some support from fans.
Yeah, I think there's something there. How are you on Jericho in the role he's in right now? And does he need to replace Big Bill if he leaves, or form a new faction with a new name? And does Brian Keith go with him?
I hadn't thought of that. I think Jericho, since getting the ROH belt, is, he was definitely not somebody I was looking forward to his appearances, but I think this new character has kind of revived him a bit. So I'll give him a credit for reinventing himself when things weren't working so well during that Hook feud. And I think he's making a bit of a comeback. So I'll give him credit for that.
Yep.
I don't turn off the TV when he's on.
Yeah. Yep. Darren, anything else AW related on your mind you want to bring up?
No, I think we hit everything. Looking at my notes, I think we hit everything.
Yep. Cool. Well, Ramen Noodle says, peace, guys. I missed Dynamite and the post show, but I'm just dropping by to hit the like button. I'll catch up with both tomorrow. Good point. A good time to say, if please like our show, comment below, subscribe to our channel, set an alarm so that you know when we go live. If you haven't yet, search PWTorch in your podcast app to subscribe to the PWTorch Dailycast lineup. It's free. Have shows dedicated to NXT, for instance, AEW, WWE, the 90s Pastcast, and Saturday night after the Royal Rumble, we will have Brandon LeClaire hosting Wrestling Night in America, a live show right here on the PWTorch YouTube channel that will be available for download in audio format on the PWTorch Dailycast feed. So again, you want to refresh every day, PWTorch Dailycast feed, and also the red and blue logo shows when you search Wade Keller. And then you'll get all our shows. I unearthed my 10 years ago 2.5 hour interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and we're doing great numbers on that replay, by the way. So download that. We dropped that Sunday, and he talks about it was on the verge of Roman Reigns winning the Rumble, and he was like, Steve had his thoughts on whether Roman looked like he was ready to be a centerpiece babyface. And he also talked about social media and how to incorporate that into canon of wrestling, and if wrestlers breaking character mattered or not. A lot of discussion 10 years ago about social media and how pro wrestling and wrestlers should handle it and what would be productive and counterproductive. So So it's a really good interview. I mean, a whole wide range of topics. He talked like Dax did tonight about the 80s tag teams. Little Dennis Condrey mentioned tonight on the show was fun, and called out Ricky Morton's age on the show. Dax, tag team traditionalist. So, by the way, check out my report on this TV show, tonight's Dynamite, and just check it out every day. Speaking of flashbacks, we're running 5, 10, 20, sometimes 30 years ago flashbacks on my TV reports on Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, Impact, and NXT. So just go to PWTorch.com, or if you're a VIP member, you get the ad-free version with bonus content, PWTorchVIP.com. My written report on Dynamite is up if you want to catch up on what happened and also get my thoughts, my analysis on the show. Recommend. Obviously, I go to a lot of trouble to write the reports, so check out what I had to say about it. If you are mostly a podcast listener, there's a lot of cool stuff on the website throughout the week, including my live coverage of the Royal Rumble on Saturday. Darrin, anything you want to say before I sign off? Do you have a favorite sports team you're rooting for? You have a Super Bowl favorite? A movie you recommend? Anything you want to leave our listeners and viewers with?
I'm gonna go with the Eagles, the underdog. Hope they in the dynasty streak of Chiefs. That's it.
I will,
because we don't have a local team. So
yeah, where are you based? Tell people.
St. Louis.
Well, the Rams. Oh, they left. Oh,
it's hurtful. It's hurtful.
No, it's. But you stole them from LA, right?
Right. Well, I guess so.
So can't you get the Cardinals back from? Has it been too long?
No, you don't want them.
There's a point there. I cannot vote for the Eagles. One, they're the NFC team that beats up the Vikings too often.
Right.
Two, their fans are horrible, awful people. Every single one of them. No exceptions.
True.
Yeah, they're just they're not an exception. There's not a good person who ever attends a Philadelphia Eagles game and cheers for them. That what Excalibur and Shivani say about MJF every week. That's how I feel about Philadelphia Eagles fans. And yes, I'm kind of. I mean, I wanted Buffalo to win because I kind of like the underdog and change, and it felt kind of felt bad because they just get so close constantly. But there is something about a team winning 3 times in a row as a storyline going into the Super Bowl. That's just like wow. And Patrick Mahomes is, that's a good team. And I don't know, it's the Eagles and KC. It's got some star power behind it for a Super Bowl. If you're booking the Super Bowl, I think you would have rather booked the Vikings than Philly, story wise, or Detroit. Honestly, like the Lions, because that's a feel good story, and their coach is so photogenic and dynamic and takes chances. But the Eagles feel like kind of been there, done that a little bit, as you say. So do the Chiefs. But sure. I would rather have the Lions in Buffalo. That'd be my dream Super Bowl if it's not the Vikings this year.
I would have liked to seen that as well, but
yeah,
it's unfortunate.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Darrin. We'll talk to you soon. It's been a blast.
See you.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, and go VIP if you haven't yet. I mentioned VIP membership. I should tell you how to go VIP. Here is the graphic with the detail. If you're watching us on YouTube, pwtorch.com/govip. pwtorch.com/govip. You can sign up and get a free 7-day trial by searching PWTorch VIP on Spotify or Patreon. So it's a great way to kind of see what we're all about on the VIP side of things. I mentioned everything with Rich and Wade. That podcast will be going up shortly after this does. So be on the lookout for that. Cover a wide array of topics. It's named Everything for a reason. We cover a whole wide range of topics. Rich Fan and I do on a weekly basis on that show. We'll have our VIP exclusive roundtable that I'll be hosting after the Royal Rumble on Saturday. And when you get a full VIP membership, you also gain access to 20 years of post-pay-per-view roundtable podcasts and hundreds of retro radio shows, including my old early 90s KFAN Pro Wrestling Focus show, with a live call-in format, big name guests, Jesse Ventura, Bill Watts, Eric Bischoff. Eric sometimes just called into the show. Real fun shows to catch up on. Just a rabbit holes everywhere to go down in terms of our 35 plus years of covering pro wrestling. When you get a full VIP membership, you can unlock all those archives. So again, we'll walk you through all the options: PayPal, credit card, debit card, Patreon. You can even sign up using your Apple account, using your Apple iPhone, all detailed at pwtorch.com/govip.